Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Results 513 show. I am here with Brenda Gagne, and I don't know on these new recordings if you're that way or if you're that way, if you're there or down there. I don't know. To me, you're right here.
To me, you're right here.
So, who knows which direction?
Totally cool.
We'll figure it out after we see a few of them. Okay,
Gotta love technology, trying new stuff, making things easier.
Absolutely. So we have another question that we are going to answer. And this question comes from Jill, and she says, whenever you have a webinar done, how do you let people know about it? So how do you promote a webinar? And this is a common question. We do this quite often. We help people build webinars and create webinars that will work. So once they get to that point, Brenda, how do you promote it? What's a few steps that we can follow?
Yeah, so it's a great question. It's very relevant. I literally just had this conversation with one of our clients the other day. So I was like, oh yeah, let's get into this, because just taking all the steps to do a webinar is big enough as it is. Like, you got to do all of the stuff that you do, and you finally have your presentation, and then you're like, how in the world do I tell people? Where do I go? How do I tell them? What do I do? And so the first, there's a couple things, and there's from super simplistic to all the way huge and advanced launches, right? So we can touch certainly from beginning kind of to the more advanced, because I know we have a lot of people listening. But the first step always is you got to practice. And I'm going to say, if this is brand new, like you've never done a webinar before, your first one that you ever do should be a practice webinar with like one or two people on it, so that you can figure out all of the controls. You can know where to look, know what to say, so that you're not being one of the people that ends up doing an entire webinar with no screen showing, or you do an entire webinar with no audio. Like, there is a little bit of a technology hurdle to doing a webinar. There's some type of platform, right? So practice it first. That's my first advice, is to find a friend or anyone, or even just put it out into nowhere land, and so that way you can see all of the stuff and practice it. But it's going to be best if you have somebody on, like they actually came through and registered, so that they can see the process and give some feedback. So that's my first advice to you right there.
Like a silly or goof up that you made on a webinar. I showed up to the wrong one. My first one, you're talking about like mistakes you're going to make. You know, on your screen. I showed up to the wrong webinar. Like I had two in my account, and I literally showed up to the wrong one. I'm teaching on one. People are waiting on the other one. Nobody's on mine.
Sorry.
So practice is important.
Yeah, so, and things are going to happen. Like your screen is going to freeze, and that kind of stuff is going to happen. But if you've practiced it enough, it's not going to be like, you won't have to freak out and be like, because you're going to be nervous that you're presenting anyway. You don't want any of these tech things to get into the way. And a person that's watching, really, they showed up, they've got their time dedicated to you. You want to really appreciate that. So the most that you can do ahead of time is going to be best. Okay. So one of the things that I was chatting with this other lady about is she has an inner circle that she works with, that she's a part of. It's a mastermind group. And she was like, so should I have it with them? I was like, oh my gosh, that is the best thing that you can do, because after you've practiced it with no one there and just to get the tech stuff out of the way, yes, you want to put it out to people that know you and love you and are really willing to give you some honest feedback. Okay. So that's it. If you have the ability to get a group of people, like your tribe, or people that maybe you share each other's content, or you're on the same team, or even just some family if necessary, that would be better before you really go out there and send it out to your market. So the more you can do that type of things, the better, because you will be nervous having some live people on it, and that's a good thing. You want to be able to get through that. So that's my next suggestion, is if you have a group of 5-10 people that you could get live on there, so you can see how the comments come in, you can see the chats, and start being able to do that. That is definitely the next suggestion, okay? Because you'll get some good feedback from them. But the next step is like, really, where do you go? All right. So you want to go to your warm market first, no matter whether you have an email list. I mean, obviously, if you have been building an email list, then that is where you go first. In addition, you have a social media following. There's people on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, wherever you're hanging out. You definitely want to put the vibe out to them like, hey, I've got a really amazing training. You want to come and watch this. Those are going to be your first invites to those people. They're the easiest ones to get because they already know who you are, that you've already built some type of relationship with them, and so you're inviting them. Now, we talk and teach tons about this inside of our Webinar Mastery course, and so there's a lot more in-depth on how you can do that and what you can say, and working on your hook and all of that stuff. There's a lot that goes into play. It's not complicated. You just make sure you want to pay attention to a few different things. But you've got your webinar set up. You've got a great hook. Throw it out to your audience first. That's the first step. Do you want to add anything to that, Justin?
No, that's good. I mean, that's looking at what assets do you currently have? You know, your email, your social following. Do you have people, like little congregations of people paying attention to you? At where are those? Maybe they're local groups. So starting with those assets that you currently have, I think is probably the best strategy to move forward with the new webinar, because just like you said, they're very, you don't have to convince them. A lot of them will show up because they are interested, plus, you know, they like you and they're doing a favor. Like, you'll have good momentum in those early stages, and that's important whenever you're doing this for the first time. You know, you get on and deliver your first webinar and have a bunch of rude asses on there that heckle you, then it's going to kind of affect how you present for that one, and it's going to affect your beliefs about webinars. So starting with this small group is good for several reasons.
Yeah, and one of the, even like, what, I don't want to call it like a ninja trick, but one of the things you can do is almost play on the fact that, hey, this is my first one. Hey guys, this is my first webinar. I've practiced it a few times. I would absolutely love for you just to come and support me so we can play around. And people will do that. If you've been giving out good value, they will show up just to help you out with the intention of just being there, just to listen to you. But the cool part is if you got a good presentation, you can hook them in, and there's a great chance that if you're selling something, they could easily buy it, even though they had no intention of buying. So that's another way to actually get people to show up and present an amazing presentation where you actually could get some sales when that wasn't there and even intent. So that is one way you could hook people on to just do that. But the next thing then is, you've already done that. You want to do that to your warm audience a couple times. Like, there's nothing wrong with throwing the same thing out there. Changing different days, changing different times, figure out what works for your audience. I had that conversation also, like, well, what time should I do it? I said, well, you need to figure out where your audience is. Are they all working jobs and they can't come during the day? Then that's probably not a good idea to do it. Maybe you want to try it a nighttime one when they're back home from work and things are settled down. So just playing around with the time, setting that out to the exact same people a few times, changing days and times, and maybe see which one works better. That's certainly something to do. And then it's time to really just go out and start either marketing yourself, where you're doing paid advertising and you're going out to find people that are interested, like Facebook marketing or something like that, pay-per-click on your fan page, and boosting posts so that you're reaching the people that really might have an interest in your offer, which is the direct response type of marketing. Or start going and taking advantage of other people that have audiences similar to you. We teach this in one of our concepts also, and it's more of like the JV circuit model. Who else has an audience like you that would have people interested in your offer? And instead of going out and paying for ads, you're basically kind of monetizing it a different way. You're not spending money to be able to come back and earn money after they buy. You're going to a networking acquaintance or someone in your tribe that you might know, say, listen, would you like to do some type of JV deal? I have a really cool webinar where I teach this, this, this. I'm going to sell something at the end for $400, and we'll do a even split. That way, you're leveraging their audience. They're doing the work. They're going out there and, you know, kind of promoting for you. And then you're paying them on money that you haven't earned yet. So the money's going to come in and you pay them a percentage. So there's no out-of-pocket money for you. So that's a really great way to leverage other people, not have to learn how to do much of advertising if that's not what you want to do. And even if you work offline and you have a network of offline people, it's a great way to go and just start chatting with people and say, hey, listen, would you like to do this with me? I can do this for your audience. It's a good thing for them too. They're providing good value to their audience. They don't have to do it. It's inviting you in. So it's kind of a win-win for all. And Justin, you teach this concept right here inside of our webinar that we do on this concept. So I'm not sure if you want to add in anything to that.
Well, I would add, if you're interested in going in that approach, which a lot of people are, because, you know, it's quite frankly, in many cases, it's the quickest path to profit. You can go and leverage somebody's existing audience instead of having to go out and build your own. So whenever you're doing that, keep in mind there's a couple of numbers that you really want to pay particular attention to. Number one, when you're approaching people, in terms of getting people excited to mail, you need to speak in terms of the dollar per registrant. So they're going to have an idea about how many people that they can get onto a webinar. And if they know that they can get, 300 or 500 people registered for a webinar, and you come and you tell them, look, I've got a good webinar that converts at this percentage. Talk to them in terms of dollar per registrants. How much money are they going to make on average for each person that actually registers? Because by doing that math, that will be a big incentive to actually want to promote. Now, obviously, if you depending on the relationship you have with them, that may not be a factor at all. But if you're talking with somebody that you don't have an existing relationship, know that the better that earnings per registrant number is, and you can't lie to them. Don't just make something up. You've got to have some data to put that out, and it's okay. You may not have it initially, but just know that the better that number is, the more people you're going to be able to get to promote. Some people you'll be able to say, look, I got a product I sell. It's on this. It pays. We've done this webinar. It pays out this much earnings per registrant. Are you interested? And you'll have people that have literally hundreds of thousands of people that they can expose your offer to, and they'll be willing to do it because your numbers are good enough. And so I tell you that because I know that it's important for people. People, when they promote, they make that a high priority. So if you're going that route, then take that approach. And we can talk about this a little bit later maybe, but yeah, in Mastery, Webinar Mastery, I talk a lot more about it, and cover it there. So
it shows you why we do like to do webinars. I mean, how powerful is that for you to be able to get in front of a qualified audience of possibly hundreds of thousands of people? If you get in touch with the correct person, how fast that can change your business. So it's really a great model, which is why we like to be doing and talking about webinars. So were you going to say something?
No.
Oh, no. Sorry. So the other thing I would like to say, so that's such a great method to do that. You obviously can go out and build your own list, create some, cold market, and have people register, get on your list, and perform that. And so there's different things you have to do for that. But there's a period of time where you are perfecting this webinar. You're throwing it out there to however you're getting people on. We always say between 9 and 14, you're wanting to just practice and practice. And every time you're getting better on the webinar so that you're getting more sales at the end. And obviously we're talking kind of about a selling webinar right now. But one of the other strategies, and this is a big strategy, and it's used all the time, and it's really taking a different approach, taking a different maybe perspective of how your hook, whatever you have, maybe coming from a different angle. Because again, you've already talked to your list about this. They've already maybe attended it. How could you go and create a bigger enticement to get people on? And that's really considered a launch formula. And so what could you do? How could you change it? What could you add to your bonuses at the end? Or how could you pull an event that's going on? Summer's coming. How can you take something that's going on in the space right now and correlate your offer around that so that there's excitement, there's a new angle, and get more people on from your list, and do literally a Hollywood type of launch, and just really think about like opening weekend. You know how much hype there always is about an opening weekend event. Take that entire launch method and implement that into your existing list, and you'll have some amazing things that happen from that too. You don't use that all the time, but that right there is another method, and we speak about that inside our Invisible Empire. One of the the product that we just have talks a lot about the launch formula, so the triple threat formula that we have that you can get from the blogs that also talks about that too. So
yeah, I'll put a link on the show notes page for people that are interested, because I want to be talking a lot more about that, because the way that it's come together, it's an amazing product. So, but I wanted to touch on that. We took, just case in point, we took a list that had been run through lots of filters saying, look, if you don't respond, if you don't open emails, if you don't click, we're going to remove you. And this list, it was non-responsive. There was a lot of people on it, but there was not a lot of response for this one particular list. And so we ran this launch formula through to that exact same list, that exact one, nothing changed, where we were getting maybe 200 opens on an email, that would be the best that we could expect from that. from running this promotion through it, literally a copy and paste of the launch formula, had 350 plus people, not just open and read. We had literally thousands of people.
Oh yeah.
Reading, and 350 plus showed up like in pretty short notice to come to a webinar. So it's when you have, you take that approach and do something different, like Brenda said, it can definitely make a difference and revive a dead audience, or people that aren't paying attention. It can get them to pay attention. So
yeah. So kind of think about where you are in your webinar attempts, and basically you got to start. That's the first thing, is just to get out there, let some people know about it, and it will just continuously grow. And if no one shows up to your webinar, you do it anyway, and you practice it, and you keep going, and you act like there's 100 people on there, and you can play around with your engagement, and it's okay. I've definitely done webinars where we've had 0, 1 people on there. In fact, not too long ago, had a mess up. We had like hardly anyone showed up, and I was like, well, that doesn't matter. This is a really great webinar. I'm going to record it. I'll reuse it for something later. So there's always value in what you're doing, and so just kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so great question. We appreciate you asking it, Jill. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.